This is a UV-Vis instrument. Our department owns 9 large UV-Vis instruments located on the 4th floor and 10 smaller UV-Vis instruments located on the 3rd floor. The UV-Vis absorbance measurement is a very common analytical technique. All of our large UV-Vis instruments but two are similar to this model named Carry. This particular model is called a true double beam instrument because its larger optic chamber accommodates for 2 real beams, one for the sample and one for the reference. Smaller instruments as this one are called dual beam instruments because their smaller optic chamber only has room for one beam that is split into 2, one serving as a reference beam and the other as a sample beam. To prepare your sample, simply dilute your unknown or your standards to the desired concentration. You will use a cuvette or cell to submit your sample to the UV-Vis beam. You may use a cheap disposable plastic cuvette or a more expensive one, such as a glass one. The most expensive cuvette is made of a high-quality quartz. It is essential that you understand where the beam comes from and where it goes. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with the hardware of the instrument. Check out the poster on the wall above the instrument. Visible wavelengths range from 400 to 800 nanometers. UV wavelengths can be measured on these instruments from 190 nanometers to 400 nanometers. The instrument has 2 small lamps, one to emit UV light and the other one to emit visible light. The wavelength at which instrument switches from one lamp to another is typically around 340 nanometers. Take a close look inside the sample chamber. You will see a small dark rectangular windows on either side. These windows let the UV-Vis beam through the sample chamber. Now look at your cuvettes. They may be 2 frosted sides or 2 masked sides, or they may have 2 narrow sides. If your cuvette has frosted side or masked sides, then these sides should not be facing the beam because they would completely absorb or block the beam. You need to put the clear sides of your cuvette in the beam path. If your cuvette has 2 narrow sides, then you need to decide if you'd like to make a measurement on a wide sample length or on a narrow sample length. For details on this, please refer to the red binder. Cuvettes often come in pairs. One should be used as a reference cell and the other one as a sample cell. The reference cell will be placed into the path of the reference beam. It may be empty or filled with a solvent, or even filled with a sample standard. For details on this, please refer to the red binder. The sample cell will be placed into the path of the sample beam. Typically, dark-colored samples do not provide good UV-Vis data because they absorb too much of the beam. Your sample should only be lightly colored. Turn on the instrument using the switch. Turn on the temperature controlling bath. And then turn on computer controlling the instrument and open the software controlling the UV-Vis instrument. Carry WinUV. Simple read will take one reading of the absorbance value at 1, 2, or 3 wavelengths. Double-click on Simple Reads. Select your parameter. Refer to the red binder for details on these. When prompted, insert your sample and click Read. The software will instantaneously provide you with the absorbance value. Once you've measured all your samples, you can simply save your results and exit from the software. Scan will measure the absorbance of your sample continuously as the wavelengths are being scanned from one starting wavelength to one end wavelength. The resulting curve, absorbance versus wavelengths, will be displayed on the graphical user interface. Choose the step size of the scan. as well as its speeds. Under parameters, the same software will offer you options to select peaks, calculate the area under a peak, and more. For details, please refer to the red binder. You will find as well a graphical user interface to measure the absorbance of your sample at a fixed wavelength versus time for kinetic study, and another one to measure absorbance at a fixed wavelength versus temperature. For details on these, software and more, please refer to the red binder. Once your measurement is complete, you can simply save your data, exit the software, and turn off the computer. Then you must remove your samples from the sample compartment and turn off the UV-Vis instrument. Don't forget to turn off the temperature controlling bath as well. You must now clean the cuvettes unless they are the single-use plastic type. Use the cuvette washer and thoroughly wash your cuvette with an appropriate solvent. Cuvettes must be stored into their box and returned to your instructor at the end of the lab.